to ProlesPod.
Hello, and welcome to ProlesPod, your bi-weekly dose of history, politics, and culture without the liberalism. You can find and follow us on most social media platforms at ProlesPod and on TikTok at proles.pod. If you want to help us reach more people, leaving 5-star reviews on any of the various podcast catchers is the best way to do that. If you want to help us with our vision, you can subscribe to our Patreon over at patreon.com/ProlesPod. There's a lot of great stuff there, such as early access to main feed episodes, bonus episodes, theory beats, study guides, raffles, surprise drops, and more, with more on the way. And speaking of bonus content, for those of you who are patrons already, what we're going to be providing here will be 2 of our bonus episodes, which are available to all tiers up front, and then follow that by a section of a bonus episode, which is only available at the $10 tier. So if you are already at the $10 tier, there will be nothing here new for you. We basically just wanted to take a little bit of time off over the holidays. So that's the reason for this sort of clip show. But we will be back in 2 weeks. The second episode, which Andre recorded with us on how to read and understand theory. But in terms of the actual episodes you're going to hear, one will be the card-carrying communist episode, which we recorded after the radical psychology episode. It's incredibly funny, if I do say so myself. The second episode that we pull from will be most of, but not all, of the Reform or Revolution bonus episode. And finally, we have the October Q&A. There's about 40 minutes of that episode, although that one was an hour and 20 minutes long, so there's definitely still more to hear on Patreon. But yeah, just head on over to Patreon if you want to hear the rest of these, and we will see you in 2 weeks. May the Spectre haunt your streets, and solidarity forever. This isn't the end of the episode. I just didn't want to have to record an outro. Okay, enjoy. Thank you for joining us, John.
Thanks.
Frank had to abandon us for some parties he had to go to. So let's get started. All right, John, you have the choice of the book, the comet, or the tavern.
Let's do the comet.
An alien intern, disguised perfectly as a fox squirrel, is sent to observe you for a month to understand humanity. What mundane daily habit of yours do you think would be utterly baffling or might fascinate them the most?
Oh my gosh.
Exposed.
Yeah. If you ask my partner, I do a lot of things that are weird. And the other day I said, we went and saw the new Superman, which was pretty cool. A little bit based, just a little,
Just slightly.
ever so slightly. Yeah, it didn't seem to, at least was making fun of billionaires, which was kind of neat. And I did like the overall arching message. But anyway, I said, what if I'm an alien? That might explain a lot of this. And she was like, that would make so much sense. So what do I do? That's the weirdest thing. I mean, sometimes, so I guess one thing that is a little strange is I benefited from Vipassana mindfulness meditation for a long time, and I did it for many years. And I kind of gone through different phases of interest in spirituality writ large, which, by the way, is a term Soviets used in a lot of their internal documentation publications, as meaning, deeply profound psychological experiences and commitments and processes. But so sometimes I will just almost instinctually or reflexively start meditating. And it's because there's nothing going on, or I kind of just feel like closing my eyes. And Claire or another friend of mine will be like, "Are you meditating right now? Like we're on a walk, or you're like sitting here drinking with friends." And it's like, yeah, but I'm feeling good. I just kind of want to shut off for a second. But it's also like,
But it seems weird as shit from the outside.
Yeah, isn't that a healthier, like, it's not like I'm asking you, like, are you distracted right now? Or are you thinking?
I hate to backtrack so much that I will go a longer route to avoid having to backtrack. Like, if I can
Oh, I
go in like
see.
a circle, which is even if it's like longer, even if it's a longer pathway, I like the feeling of backtracking grates on me so badly that I again like I'll and sometimes I make the choice because it's more scenic or it's a nicer drive or I get to walk past a thing that I like. But ultimately my decision making process on how to travel through an area or to or from a place is how do I avoid not having to return back on the path that I already took.
Because you're a true progressive, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I'm always moving forward. The dialectic is in motion in my
Right.
stupidity.
Nice. My ADD is so bad that everything has to be routine or my entire life will fall apart. And one of those things is every time I get out of the car, I touch my front pocket and my back pocket to see, like, just totally subconsciously, to see if my keys and my wallet are with me. Because otherwise, I'll end up locking my keys in the car, or have forgotten my wallet, or whatever. And that probably looks weird to like the average onlooker.
The average alien.
That's okay. I mean, Lenin said habit is everything, so, hey.
What report about human priorities do you imagine this squirrel sending back to its planet?
This is a squirrel?
Yeah, it's a fox
It's an
squirrel.
alien disguised as a fox. It's
It's
an
an alien
alien
intern.
intern disguised as a
Ah,
fox squirrel.
okay. I missed the memo on that one. What's the question?
What report about human priorities do you imagine it sending back to its planet?
Oh, god, it would be that this guy has none. Like, doesn't he have a podcast in 10 minutes? Why is he still eating eggs? Why is he not prepping with notes?
No
Yeah.
sense of urgency.
Yeah, so
Okay.
human beings inherently inefficient and bad at
Oh,
planning
very.
is what's going on
Avoidant,
there.
yeah.
Excellent. All right, moving on to the next one. All right, you've got the void, the giant, or the mine.
Oh, the void. Atoms and void. All things are emptiness, shunyata.
Everyone experiences at least one, quote, dark night of the soul or period of intense doubt and questioning. What was that for you?
Oh, some light conversational topics. Let's see.
The
What if a
cards
squirrel
are
was an
guiding the
alien?
conversation.
What do you feel about your father, for real?
Yeah.
Oh my god. I don't know. Dark Night of the Soul? Well, I guess I'll have a serious and then maybe a funny answer. Like, well, I used to be a monk. I was training to be a monk, I should say, an Orthodox
Damn.
Christian monk. And then I kind of realized God isn't like metaphysically real. And I was like, shit, what do I do now? That's kind of how I ended up in psychology. It's sort of like a secularized form. But a dark night of the soul. Well, I mean, under capitalism, there's so much precarity. There have been many times in getting a PhD that I thought this is all going to collapse. And it's not like if you get three-fourths of a PhD, that's like going to get you three-fourths of the income and job opportunities, right?
Right.
It's
It's
all or
all or
fucking
nothing.
nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there are many times where I mean, just deeply upset and stressed and worried because of what was going, like the lack of urgency on behalf of my bosses or the bureaucrats in charge of my profession is just so, it really teaches you going into psychology. Psychology is full of crazy people and so in power, and it teaches you a lot about human nature and behavior and also this the nature of systems. And I think that I had meant a lot of doubts getting this far, and I suppose I'm grateful that I made it, but I only made it ultimately because I found meaning in my own work. I mean, nobody told me, people did not tell me to do what I'm doing with this, attempt at creating a Marxist psychology in America, but they also told me not to do things, and it was only by deliberately disobeying that I have found anything worth doing. And then maybe in a positive dark night of the soul, something a little lighter for your easy listening audience. So the last time I took mushrooms, I sort of like had this experience of my body merging with everything. It was very somatic. It was really cool. And then I got a text from work that a client was here to see me. And as you know, when you're high on mushrooms, it kind of goes up and down, intense and comes up,
Yes.
Yeah.
comes down. And in I sent a reply, and then I suddenly started coming down again, and I had a moment of clarity, and the reply I sent was, "Hello," with, like, 100 O's after it, and I suddenly caught myself, and I was like, "Okay, just say what you need to say, like, there must have been a scheduling error, I do sincerely apologize," and I worked that out, but just like, God, talk about bad timing. So that was a
Or
moment of
good
panic
timing.
where I could have started to have a really bad trip, but I just said, "You know what? Like, nobody's nobody. I didn't do this deliberately. Neither did this."
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I guess like follow-up there, what was the specific nature of the clarity that eventually emerged
On the
from
first
the
one.
first one? Yeah, because you kind of explained the second one, I guess.
Oh, the moment of clarity of my first Dark Night of the Soul.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, there's no clarity on that. Yeah,
There's
There
still
was
no
no
clarity.
moment.
psychotherapy is, or psychology. The clarity is understanding just how kind of fucked and ultimately I don't want to. So I don't want to paint too broad of a brush because there's amazing work in psychology. Like the best science and philosophy combines and finds its home in psychology. So
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of a lot of stuff people might not expect, but when you see just how kind of like empty it is, you really just. I guess that gives you the clarity and the sense of freedom and permission to move on. So one example of that very quickly is psychotherapists on average do not improve with time and experience. They actually get worse.
Mhm.
So they peak at about 5 years time and then get worse. And if you take, this is a study that's been replicated a few times now, but if you take, the first study was in the 70s. If you take history professors and give them a week of basic therapy skills training, they are as good as clinical master students in the last semester of their practice
Wow.
at psychotherapy. So, and it's because we all have this innate kind of indigenous healing capacity, and really all psychotherapy does is kind of direct that and maybe refine it a little. Now, psychotherapists can improve with time and experience, and you learn that, but you realize that all this didactic training, the accumulation of declarative knowledge, doesn't confer outcomes, and so you really do realize that basically almost all of psychotherapy training is just kind of a farce, and you're like, oh, wow, I'm like
Mhm.
13 years deep in school. What am I doing? But the clarity that comes with that is the permission to move on, as long as what you're doing is ethical and effective, and it gives you the freedom to do all kinds of interesting things. Like I've done D&D as therapy, and I've done all kinds of like kind of weird, unconventional stuff that's so much more fun and engaging for everybody. So there's some clarity.
Mm.
Nice.
Fair.
Do you feel like, so when you do D&D as therapy, is that like a one player campaign, or do you try to bring in a group of people all kind of different backgrounds or struggling with the same things, or what does that look like?
Good question. In as much as there's a standard model for this, there really isn't. There's a lot of people in Seattle doing this work. It's out of insurance. It's always direct because insurance doesn't cover that. It's direct primary care. Sometimes it's just therapeutically applied D&D. It's not even called psychotherapy if a therapist who's licensed is not doing it. Still the same effect, like life coaching kind of falls under that umbrella. But group therapy is kind of the standard approach, especially with kids, whether they're neurodiverse or just they were locked in too long under COVID for social skills development. And you're just kind of you're basically just kind of throwing in some therapy techniques here and there and some personal development stuff. And of course, it's like there haven't been too many studies on it the last I checked, but it appears to be just as effective. There's a Japanese guy who did a bunch of research on it, and there's actually a group called RPG Research, run by a great, brilliant guy named Hawk Robinson, who kind of is like they call him the grandfather of applied RPGs, applying RPGs to learning, to helping people recover from TBIs and other serious injuries. That's recreational therapy, or using it for psychotherapeutic purposes. Yeah, it's a real thing. It works.
Nice. All right, John. So your choices now are the well, the temple, the dungeon.
The temple.
A worldwide initiative pairs people from vastly different cultures and backgrounds for a mandatory 1 month skill swap. Each must teach the other a core skill from their daily lives. What specific skill pairing do you think would lead to a boom of socialist movements on a global scale?
Oh my god.
These are tough.
How about making people fucking mine cobalt for their goddamn smartphone? Watching somebody
Oh,
twerk
shit.
on Reddit's not going to be, seem so urgent after that.
Mhm.
Although maybe it'll gain extra urgency and we'll really understand the
Twerking
meaning.
for social justice.
Yeah. Probably, I mean, education through labor. I mean, I did labor jobs before I went back to school. I really didn't have I don't have a background of parents and family who really went to school. Both my parents are now dead. They were substance abusers, and so I
Mhm.
before going to school, I did a bunch of god awful labor jobs, and that's kind of what inspired me to take it more seriously. So yeah, I think if you just flip the global south and north, you'd probably have at least a revolution in the periphery pretty quickly.
True.
Yeah. Seeing how the other half lives more or less is very eye-opening in both senses, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I also think it probably would reprioritize like people in the Imperial Corps, like what they care about, just like COVID did, right? COVID, I loved that people wouldn't go back to shitty jobs anymore.
Mhm.
That
Yeah,
was
that was
great.
great.
So,
Yeah, we had such a moment there. I hate when we have those moments where we can topple everything and we don't.
Nobody's ready to do it. Yeah.
well, as Mark said, like the existing mode of production has to exhaust all of its productivity before it can be overthrown, right? So
Yeah.
True, but
we're
we
not quite
also
there
know
yet.
from Lenin that the vanguard is necessary in order to push the revolution.
Yeah.
Well, as
Yeah.
long as I'm in it.
There is this, it's a current that runs through anthropology that talks about how one of the aspects of, it's not just, it's also like sociology as well,
Hmm.
but like the aspects of neoliberal capitalism that was important was not just moving manufacturing and extraction out of the imperial core for financial reasons, but
Right.
also to move the site of suffering as a
Oh
result of
yeah,
those industries to another place.
where you can't see it.
Because correct, like the idea of like miners getting trapped in mines, it can and does happen here in the United States, but it's
Hmm.
so much less frequent than it was when mining was a primary industry
Right.
here. The same with like people being injured in factories, much less common now than it was in the 19th century or the early to mid 20th century when manufacturing was primarily done here in the United States.
Hmm.
There were multiple motivations for moving it overseas. So I think, yeah, forcing somebody to go mine cobalt in some other place would bring that home because the suffering is now in
I'd
your
certainly
face.
like to see some of the bureaucrats I've worked with pushing a wheelbarrow.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. All right, moving on. You have the throne, the plant, or the monstrosity.
The monstrosity.
If you had to get a full body tattoo, what would it be?
Garfield. Next question.
You're just like your whole body would
You
become
are
Garfield.
Garfield.
Exactly.
Amazing. Just the orange, the stripes. Now, do the big eyes get tattooed on your face? Is that how that
On
works?
my eyelids, yes.
On your
With some lasagna hanging out of your mouth.
Yes,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. A little bit of red sauce. Oh
Yeah.
man.
Incredible. Jeremy.
John, obviously from Garfield, so that I could
That's
then
right. Day one.
then I could yell at John as John when John is
Yes.
Garfield.
Exactly.
Incredible.
Justin, what do you got?
Oh shit. I would say I would probably do like mine's not funny. I would probably do like a mural of the like most important or transformative moments of my life, thoughts, philosophies, etc. People
Hmm,
that
a timeline.
Wow.
a
Way to bring
timeline.
us,
Yeah.
way, yeah, show off.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for
You're
that.
so committed to the revolution.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm basically Maui
I'm
from
committed to Garfield, so
And I'm committed to the lols. So we've got now the ring, Urale, or the giant.
what does your raleigh mean?
It's a D&D thing.
Okay. I've long since left the Faerun behind, so since I don't know. What was the last one?
The
I'll do the one
giant.
I don't know. Do the one your raleigh.
Urale. Okay. What memory stands out from your life as when you felt the most embarrassed?
Oh God. Probably in the podcast we just recorded. God, like, huh? Psychology? Marx? It's the Soviets? I don't remember any of this.
MF Doom?
MF
Uh,
Doom. Well,
that was
that
in the
was
Oh
Lost
yeah,
recorded. That's
chapters.
right.
that's right. You don't have to ever answer for
That's
that.
right. That's why I avoided the. I elided the ring. Um, Most embarrassing. That's a really hard question. I remember being a kid and being embarrassed, but I don't really. I used
Yeah,
to have such
it's just
bad.
like the one that stands out.
Mm, oh my goodness. Oh, I have a very funny one that's dealing with context. I remember being a kid, and this definitely sort of has an I think is a personality trait I was just born with that informs my skepticism about the world and my materialism. Although I have, I'm really interested in what the material is, and all those ontological questions physics is now asking and all that really cool stuff, right? But I'm really skeptical of things. And one of my supervisors in psychology described me as the most circumspect person he'd ever met. Because I'm like, is that really true? Is that really how that works? Because I remember being a kid and not being able to tell what was real. Like professional wrestling, like, are they really hitting those guys? Wait, cops are there. Cops are real. Cops beat people up. Like, are they really getting hit? Like, and just I remember that was of deep concern to me as a child. What is true? What is beautiful? How do I best serve man? I'm just kidding. But like what is true? Like how could that be real? And I'm still deeply fascinated for that reason by people I disagree with. I'm like, how do you not see this? They're so interesting to me. But a really insane and hilarious example of that and of my social anxiety, and of my confusion about what's true and real, and also my total unwillingness to embarrass myself by asking and finding out. I remember being in literally in preschool, and we were being told, depending on the day of the week and the time, we're going to have different stations you go to, whether it's like a game station or the computer station. This was, there were computers very early on, point and click adventures, and probably kid pics or something like that for those in the know, or like a reading, like, yeah, okay, like I want to read. The teacher was like, yeah, there'll be stations that you rotate through. And I remember the only thing I knew, and God, how old did I have to be? Like 5, 6 years old, five and a half or something. The only thing I knew about stations was trains. And I remember thinking, wait, we're getting on trains. We're moving around. I don't know how trains work or train schedules. Like, I don't know how to orient to this. And is this like, I remember persistently having the feeling, is this something I'm supposed to know about? Like my mom didn't tell me about how this works. And so I think that would be one, is not having the context, being wildly confused, but nonetheless refusing to do anything about it. I certainly didn't ask anyone for a clarification here. I just assumed we were leaving the
You're just
school.
gonna get on the train.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which may be
Embarrassing
soon
in
more real.
retrospect, but not at the time.
Did you learn anything important from this experience?
It's really good to ask questions, clarifying
Yeah.
questions.
I
Uh,
have I have so many embarrassing moments from my childhood. Like I was so ADHD and my mom would not take me to be looked at or medication or therapy or anything. So I was just
Hmm.
off the rails all the time, which meant that I was constantly embarrassing myself. But I think the most transformative embarrassing moment. So when I was in 8th grade, we had moved back from Korea. I was a huge Star Wars nerd back before it was cool.
Hmm.
And so and we moved to this small town to this Christian school where everyone had like grown up together. And I was just like this freak from Korea. And so they bullied the shit out of me. And
Mm.
one day they had tied my shoelaces together and they had tied my backpack to the blinds, the string on the blinds. And so I got up.
Were they Rube Goldberg? What is this elaborate?
Yeah, I got up and I took like a step, and which then caused me to trip. But my backpack was tied to the thing, so I couldn't really trip. And then like fell forward and backwards simultaneously.
Whoa.
And yep, and and just crashed. And the kid that was, and so of course the whole class was laughing at me. And the kid who did it got up he was behind me, so I knew it was him. Got up and he like was laughing also, but stuck his hand out to pull me up, and I took my foot in the middle of his chest and just like kicked him backwards, and then I ran to the
Oh.
bathroom and cried. But that was like incredibly embarrassing, but it also like was transformative because that was the moment at which I was like, people are fucking assholes and I have to like, I guess, learn to not give a shit. And so
Mm.
that kind of created like kind of formed like the basis of my adolescent development, which is kind of fucked.
It's
That
very
was kind of a sad
touching. Yeah.
story, honestly.
Well, I mean, hey, it's okay.
Touching and informative. I've learned nothing, but I appreciate that you've learned to protect yourself from people.
My story is just embarrassing in a funny way, and I didn't learn anything, which is when I was 7 years old, we were living in England, and I went to a British primary school,
Well,
Hayfield Lane Primary School, if anybody is familiar in South
shout
Yorkshire.
out to Hayfield.
Shout out to
Hey.
Hayfield Lane. And I don't know if it's different now, but the British they don't call it public school because that's a different thing. It is government schools. I don't know whatever. You you have to wear a uniform,
Mhm.
which I did, but you also had to have gym clothes to change into, and it had to
Ah,
be a very particular type. And if you did not have it, you were required to run around in your underwear and a tank top during PE
was Jimmy Savile your PE
and
teacher?
plimsolls. It was
It's
across
awful.
the board. It is quite disgusting in retrospect. But you had to wear these shoes called plimsolls, which were like these cheap, flat soled canvas shoes that you just slipped on and off. All
Mm.
right. Now, as I am in PE class, running around in my underwear and my tank top, somebody pulls the fucking fire alarm. And
Uh,
so I and a bunch of my other classmates are either in their gym shorts, which they had been purchased specifically for this purpose, as well as a handful of people like me who were in their underwear, all had to go outside and line up. And there is no time of the year where weather is great in the UK,
right,
particularly the north.
right.
But it was a shitty, like misty, slightly drizzly day, as many days were. I think it was like
Fair.
October, so it was kind of chilly. And I'm out there like freezing my ass off in my underwear while everybody else in all of these older classes are laughing at me and my fellow classmates in our underwear
It's
standing in a
awful.
line. That was embarrassing. And I did not learn anything other than the British weird ass rules not terribly good for kids. Yeah. So
That's dark.
The last
let's
last
do
guy.
one more. Here we go.
All right.
All right. You've got the dungeon, the tree, or the temple.
Dungeon.
This is my favorite question.
This is a
Can't
very
wait
good
for
I'm so
question.
this.
glad it came up.
This is a very good question. Would you rather have to listen to only Nickelback for the rest of your life, or have to say the "you" from Crank That Soldier Boy every time you say the word "you"?
I already do that, so it's gonna be that one. You.
You.
Yeah, I sort of am constantly stimming or ticking or chirping something from some song or some commercial 10,000 years ago. So it's going to be Soldier Boy, please.
So
Man, you would get on everyone's fucking nerves.
it would be
Yeah,
amazing.
but it'd be great. Yeah.
It would
It's
be.
really the only right answer. Like, who the hell wants to listen to Nickelback for the rest of their
Yeah,
lives?
did
Yeah.
Soldier Boy like had some? I don't know if you know this. Had some scam he was writing about this game system.
His entire career.
Yeah, yeah, his whole career. They got to give him credit. Wasn't he like the youngest musician to make $1 million or something like that? Some crazy go
It might have
platinum or
been.
something. He was like 16 or 14. I was something crazy.
Wasn't it also though that he was like the face of this and that it was some white
Oh,
guy
it's a
behind him who had
conspiracy.
like created his career? I forget. It was a weird situation when he like busted on the scene like
Wow.
as an artist, but yeah, Crank That is a banger regardless.
Yeah, you can't take that
um,
away from him. I'm
exactly.
sorry,
Can't take it away.
you can't take that
You
away from
can't
him.
take that away from him. Yeah.
Incredible. All
Now
right,
watch me.
John, that was fun.
Yeah, that was a good
Thank you. That
time.
was fun. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so
Next
much
time I'll
for
sound like I
joining
know what
us.
I'm talking about. We'll have a good time.
Let
And
us
then
know when you want to record that Soviet psychology episode.
Yes. Yep. I'm gonna brush up on some things. Yep.
So, when I was a baby leftist, one of the people that I sort of became interested in as a revolutionary leader was Rosa Luxemburg, probably for all the reasons that I criticized at the beginning of the episode, because her revolution didn't succeed, and so none of the hard decisions had to be made by her. But I bought this book that's the Letters of Rosa Luxemburg, and it is a fat fucking book. I mean, like 500 pages or more, I think, of just text from.
Does it include letters that she's writing to Clara Zetkin's son?
Probably. It has a lot of letters to Clara Zetkin. She's got a couple of letters to Lenin, Karl Liebknecht, all sorts of different people who were important and whatever to her. It's in like chronological order, so it goes back to the 19th century and then all the way basically up to her death. It's crazy because she was in prison for most of the revolutionary period. She was in prison in 1917. She was in prison when the German Revolution started. In fact, she was released as a result of the German Revolution that started in 1919. And if anybody, all 15 people who have seen the very first episode of ProlesPod when it was like a video series, it was on the German Revolution, and I probably said things that were very stupid and didn't make any sense. But so some of this will be a rehash, though, if you are one of those 10 people. But like, she was a very thoughtful person. Like in her letters, it's very clear that she considers many different angles on something. She's very conscientious. She is very, like, her morals are important to her. Like there's a point where she's writing a letter. I forget who she's writing the letter to, but she talks about how this guy drove an ox cart full of supplies into the prison and was like whipping the ox like very aggressively because the ground was like muddy or something and he couldn't get the cart to go in smoothly. And she like runs out and starts like chastising him and like giving her a piece of his mind. And then at the bottom of the letter, she just draws the ox cart in the prison yard and the ox like leading the cart. And like,
Aww.
yeah, it's horrible. But like, a lot is made of the differences between Luxembourg and Lenin and the contention, I suppose, between the two. But in a letter, and I believe this is to Clara Zetkin, she says, because after the revolution has succeeded in 1917, there is a counter revolution which sparks what is called the Red Terror. And bourgeois newspapers start printing all sorts of wild stories about like the Bolsheviks committing pogroms, about hundreds of thousands of people dying and whatever. And so Luxembourg, who was born to a Jewish family, is concerned about this, but she talks about how it was a big deal that the pogroms were stopped by the Bolsheviks because they were continuous, like a continuous cycle in Ukraine, in Western Russia, in what was known again as like the Pale of Settlement. Pogroms were a consistent problem, and it was a part of the Bolshevik program to put a stop to them. So she said, I think we can probably dismiss those rumors out of hand, like immediately, without like investigation. And she said, of the other stories which are being put forth by the bourgeois press, maybe some of them are true and maybe they are not, but this is a revolutionary period. This is an important
piece of socialist history, and we need to, even if we have private criticisms of their tactics, we cannot be seen to criticize them in public. We cannot be seen basically to be talking shit about them. It's basically critical support, right? Like, even if we don't agree with what they're doing, we must stand with them on a fundamental level because they are doing what we want to do. And we will need all the help we can get when the time comes. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
You know, she's basically saying, even if they are true, which they probably aren't, they're probably sensationalized, but if it is true, we need to like keep our fucking mouths shut about this shit. And even if we have those criticisms, we only talk about it amongst ourselves. We don't put that out into the fucking world, which is, I think, a big deal.
Which, like, everyone should remember, the internet is public.
Mm-hmm. So I will say one thing, like part of this tension that is perceived between Lenin and Rosa, or sorry, Miss Luxemburg, I don't know, Rosa Luxemburg, is that
Miss Luxemburg, if you're nasty.
Thanks for that, Ray. So what I was gonna say is that this tension is actually, I mean, I got to be straight here, is that Stalin plays a role in this. So in 1922, so this was years after she was murdered. She was murdered in 1919, and 1922 posthumously. So after she died, years after, some of her writings are published that hadn't been published before, that were directly critiquing the Bolsheviks and stuff like that. And so Stalin took it upon himself as part of an argument addressing various things, kind of calls her out on these criticisms, right? And so then that kind of, makes her, particularly at this time during the Soviet Union, the 1920s, there's uncertainty about whether we're going to follow the NEP or whether we're going to go to collectivization. She kind of became like one of those people that was viewed as being antagonistic to the party. And so she was kind of, say, blacklisted, but her work wasn't appreciated during that particular time when theoretical and practical formations within the Bolshevik Party were quite tumultuous as to what was going to happen next. And then, so there's that happens. And then Trotsky, a few years after that, I think going to the 30s, then starts reviving Rosa as being a figurehead for his political theories. And so, in fact, like before he dies, his plan for the Fourth International was about like Rosa Luxemburg was kind of seen as like a figurehead for what he wanted to achieve through the Fourth International. So my point of what I'm just saying in this brief history lesson is just that it's like the controversy or this tension that is perceived between Lenin and Rosa Luxemburg was very much generated by her being this figure that is being as being part of the battleground between Stalin and Trotsky in the 30s. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, and like if they were not published when she was alive, it's possible she just decided they did not need to be published for the reasons that were laid out in that.
Well, she may have changed her mind by then, right?
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah, she might have been like, actually, this was obviously proven to be correct, or they would not have succeeded in their revolution. And we have to remember the German Revolution failed, or it failed for the KPD, for the Spartacists. Like, for people who don't know, so the SPD split once already in Christ, I think it was 1916, into the SPD and the USPD, which is the Independent Social Democratic Party, which is the one that Rosa joined along with Karl Liebknecht. And then they split again, the USPD split again into the USPD and the KPD, the Communist Party of Germany. Then there was the Spartacist League, which was another entity. But like in 1918, the revolution was kicked off more or less by the German Navy, by the naval sort of enlisted personnel refusing to send ships out to war because the war was already over. The Germans had already lost, but the Imperial High Command wanted to be in a better bargaining position during the end of the war. And so their plan was to basically send what remained of the Navy in the port of Kiel out into the North Sea to attack British ships knowing that those people would die because they were outnumbered greatly, but they also knew that that would cause losses to the British, and they could say, well, look, we got more, we're going to keep sending more, but we will stop if you give us these concessions. And so the Kiel naval forces were like, fuck that, we're not going to go out to die just so you're in a better sort of negotiating position. And that is more or less what kicked off the German Revolution. Unfortunately, and I believe at this time it was the USPD was not integrated enough into either the labor unions or the workers' councils, because there were workers' councils and soldiers' councils in Germany, just like there were in Russia at the time of the Bolshevik Revolution. But they were not integrated well enough into them, and the SPD was with the trade unions. And so they were much more able to direct things. And Karl Liebknecht sort of gave this rousing speech early on, like praising the Kiel sailors for what they did. But that was sort of the height of his power. And the leader of the SPD, Friedrich Ebert, basically took over after that. He became the de facto leader of the revolution, and he worked from that point forward to undermine the further left forces, the USPD, the KPD, and the Spartacists, right? This is where the meme, like Bernie killed Rosa, like that meme comes from this period where Friedrich Ebert, rather than integrating these further left faces, rather than bringing them on board, he continually worked to undermine them, to try to destroy them, so that the SPD was the only force leading the revolution, basically. And in 1919, what is referred to quite often as the Spartacist uprising was no such thing. And I think it is historical revisionism to call it that. That is what Ebert called it. And he called it that so he could use it as a pretext to murder Karl Liebknecht and Rosa Luxemburg along with other communists. It was a spontaneous uprising in Berlin, which was just the workers getting out on the streets, fed up because the SPD had made all these promises about reforms and the workers' councils taking power and all of this sort of stuff that never happened and probably was never intended to happen. But the workers were frustrated, and so they got out in the streets. And instead of listening to their demands and responding to them, Ebert called in the Freikorps, who were, they worked with the fascists later on. They were sort of quasi-fascist. They were a mercenary group, though. They were paid by the state to do this because German soldiers refused to put down the uprising. And so he called in the Freikorps and sent them in to put down the uprising, called it the Spartacist uprising so that he could take out leaders of the Spartacist League, and again ended up having these quasi-fascist mercenaries murder Karl Liebknecht and Rosa Luxemburg, even though they had little to nothing to do with this uprising at all. And so I think we should probably, as leftists, stop calling it a Spartacist uprising, because it wasn't. The Spartacists joined in when they saw the workers out in the street, but it was not led by them. And again, it was just a pretext to murder the opposition, the left opposition to the SPD. But again, the German Revolution, on the part of, if you're looking at it from the perspective of the USPD, the KPD, or the Spartacists, failed, right? Like, it was quote unquote successful for the SPD. They got their bourgeois democracy, they got their social democracy that they wanted, but from the perspective of the further left, the socialist, the communist forces, it wasn't. And so I think that is something we really ought to bear in mind when we look at the conflict. And it's something that should be pointed out when we're looking at the conflict between Lenin and Luxemburg on these points that she makes against Lenin. That was like a Cliff's Notes of what is more or less the entire first episode of Proles.
That was impressive.
No, that was a great explanation. I recommend people check out on Actually Existing Socialism. There's an episode that I did with...
Did you guys know Tony has another podcast?
What?
Sorry, Tony, what's it called?
Actually Existing Socialism. Thanks, Ray. I know you guys probably haven't heard of it. But on that podcast, I did have a guest I can't remember her name, but it's the episode I did on East Germany called East Germany, Stasi State or Socialist Paradise. And she does a pretty good overview of the lead up of what the SPD was experiencing, the lead up to Nazi Germany's ascension. It's a very interesting kind of discourse she has on that. So I recommend people check that out, in addition to Jeremy's excellent summary there. One thing that I appreciate about this work is that it's one of those texts which has been like that its basic argument has held up so fucking well. Like it is the history of, I mean, you need to include the pre-war era too, but like the post-war, right after the war, as Western Europe is rebuilding, a lot of concessions are made, a lot of reforms are made in the US as well, I guess with the New Deal prior to the war itself. So all these reforms are happening, right? But then we see in the 90s the fall of the Soviet Union, the rise of neoliberalism, that virtually all of these things that were granted in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s have, for the most part, been clawed back or in the process of being clawed back. So it's held up so well, unfortunately, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, I think, has to do with the proximity to actually existing socialist countries, right? Like the Nordic countries really needed to look good as compared to the Soviet Union because Finland is right on the fucking border, and there are massive communist parties in those countries. Well, at least there were at the time. I'm not positive, to be honest, of the makeup of political parties in the Nordic countries now, but there were massive communist movements and parties in the Nordic countries at that time. West Germany was made to look great as compared to East Germany for the same reason. South Korea, tens of millions of dollars was poured into the economy of the South so that it looked good as compared to the North. You know, I mean, and it was not until, again, the fall of the Soviet Union, the dissolution of the Soviet Union, that a lot of these places started to go to shit because they no longer had to look good anymore as compared to their counterparts, their socialist counterpart. I don't know.
And I feel like I wanted to make that point in our last episode, the one big blanket and other hilarious arguments against communism, when we talked about how socialist countries are always said to be like performing or everything to like look fake, right?
Yeah.
In the presentation. And then it's like, this is that to like the nth level where the whole society is like pumped with money and concessions, etc. For sure, this is a little bit longer than a tourist trip to the country, right? It's 30, 40 years or something like that. But boom, once that's done, everything goes downhill, things get clawed back, and there's no need to act. There's no need to fund the set anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it is also interesting in the Republic of Korea. Also, that was around the time that it was allowed to become democratic, because prior to that, it was a dictatorship. It's hard to define exactly when it ended because, like, it supposedly ended in what I think 88 or 89, but then the dictator was elected, quote unquote, democratically in 89, and then he served some number of years as the president, and I'm just like, this is, but like, yeah, I don't know, but that was also not allowed to happen, at least not fully, until the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 91. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird sort of dichotomy that, like, it was, you know, again, like tens of millions of dollars pumped into the economy to create productive forces there and to modernize it and to provide all of these things, but it wasn't it. Unlike the FRG, and unlike the social democracies in the Nordic countries, it was not allowed to be democratic. It had to be controlled as a dictatorship. And I don't know if that's because of racism or because of the power of the communist and socialist forces in the South were stronger. I don't know. Somebody who knows more about this, come on, ProlesPod.
For those who, I guess, listeners who can't see, but Ray looks shocked and confused right now.
Yeah, I mean, same. I'm coming down with some kind of illness, and I'm ready to go to bed.
I hope it's not the sickness of revisionism.
Are you down to the sickness of revisionism?
Not that one.
There's like a weird beef. Speaking of down to the sickness, there's like a weird beef between Billy Joe Armstrong of Green Day and whatever the lead singer is of Disturbed, because apparently he's like a fucking Zionist weirdo, and he like went and like signed bombs and stuff that were
Oh yeah, I think I saw something
going to
about
be
that.
used against Gaza. And so he was like, oh, if Billy Joe Armstrong wants to talk so much, he can come and talk to me. And I'm like, this is the weirdest fucking beef since Robert Smith and Morrissey. That's I think my favorite musical beef, because they're both like soft boys.
Soft boy beef, vegetarian beef.
Soy boy
beef.
Ooh.
Do either of you know anything about AFD or what's going on there?
No, I just know that it is incredibly depressing that the regions that make up the former German Democratic Republic or East Germany, currently it's like a majority AFD, so the far right party currently. It's so depressing, and I understand why, right? I mean, East Germany got not just the short end of the stick during reunification; they got totally fucked.
Right.
All of the public services, or I guess public and everything public, was privatized, which led to a total decimation of the working class there.
Yeah.
Which of course left them open and susceptible to the worst fucking elements of East German society that were suppressed by the German Democratic Republic. The Nazism that, of course, even though they did the best job they could suppressing it, it was still there. There were still former Nazis and what used to be East Germany. So it's just sad. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you have to think about it. Like, World War II ends in 1945.
Yeah.
The GDR is established in 1949 or 1950.
It's 48, I think. It's right after the Berlin airlift, right? 48.
Because, well, the FRG is declared before the GDR.
1949.
1949. Okay, so 1949, and then it's only 50 years later that East Germany, the GDR, is dissolved. So that's 2.5 generations, but a lot of the people who would have literally fought on the side of the fascists in World War II were probably just old men at that point. You know what I mean? Like, they would have been in their 70s or their 80s or maybe even in their 90s if they were like senior officers. And they had children, and those children had children. And so it takes a long time to work that ideology out of people, even after the revolution. I mean, obviously, there are still reactionary forces that persisted in the Soviet Union, and they had a lot longer to work on that.
But even so, in the former Soviet Union, like once it's dissolved, once the censorship laws, particularly against racism and things like that, are no more, there's a huge publishing boom.
Yeah.
And all those people who, they think that what they really wanted to say was not politically correct, so they didn't say it. All those motherfuckers had the opportunities to spread their ideas again. So
yeah, that's some shit.
Which I guess brings me to a question I feel like we cannot get off this call without asking, is like, where do you see, like, don't you see it all today here? Well, here where you all are, and where I am too, but you all don't know where I am, so
it's a secret.
I mean, capitalism is behaving the way that she says, even though it has not yet led to its inevitable collapse under the weight of its own contradictions. And the class consciousness is, I don't know that it's any further than it was. But the general push for reform without an overarching vision for a revolution, or even an attempt at one.
It is rough out there. And you're right. Like, I feel like class consciousness is increasing, but I don't know if that's just confirmation bias, because I'm in this world where, like, I talk about it all the time, and
because there's as many people that are like, oh, capitalism. Like
radicalism is increasing, but the radicalism could be
exactly
fascist or
and
socialist.
I remember something that my coach, this had nothing to do with politics, said, but like of ideas in general. She's actually talking about like wellness culture and the increasing popularity of like yoga and like wellness and the proliferation. She was like, look, like, there's good things about things becoming popular. I don't want to say that, but also, and like the normalization of like certain concepts or ideas that could help people or whatever. But the more popular things get, the more shallow people's understanding of them is, and the more co-optable they are. And so like, I think saying capitalism, it's capitalism, I think has increased, but I don't know that that's the same thing as an increase in class consciousness.
Sure.
Because like trad wives also don't like capitalism.
Right. And it's also like a lot more people are open to the concept of social democracy in the like mid 20th century sense, not the 19th century sense.
Yeah, in the reformist sense.
Correct. Then are open to revolutionary socialism. So I don't know what to do with that, because that's good. It's better than people who
right, like, which was my point. Like, don't you see it here that it's like the reformist viewpoint is the one that has gained popularity?
Sure.
Has that gained? Because it's kind of like, well,
yes, Bernie Sanders and AOC have been on a speaking tour here in the United States.
Got it.
And they have had some of the largest political rallies in state history, in certain states' histories, period. Like hundreds of thousands of people went to the one in Denver. Huge numbers of people. Maybe it's 100,000, but either way, like that is the largest political rally that has ever been held in Colorado state history. So yes, I think there are people who are looking for alternatives to the shit that's going on. Unfortunately, it looks like they are looking for the same alternatives that have been ruled out 100 years ago by Rosa Luxemburg and Lenin and fucking all sorts of other people. That's why people need to read theory, for Christ's sake.
Okay, final question. What is the weirdest or most random job you have ever had?
Oh, man. I've had a lot of weird and random jobs, and so that is a difficult question for me to answer.
Pick the weirdest.
Top three.
Top three. Okay. I did when I was very young, I would have been like 19 years old, I think. I had a direct sales job for about 3 weeks.
Ooh.
And it was like, I was living in Dallas at the time and having difficulty finding a job that paid enough to support myself and
Weird. I'm glad that's not a problem anymore.
And a spouse and a young child, because I had no like marketable skills and I had no like experience outside of like a handful of food service type jobs and whatever. So I answer this ad in the newspaper, because this is a very old sentence, I understand. And it was like, come.
So, young listeners, the newspaper, there after it was like the Trotsky propaganda,
Yeah.
it was like this thing. It's in the name, right? Like news, right? So you could like read events and like information, but sometimes people would put like ads of like stuff they wanted or people they were looking for. It was like a wild. And the paper was like really thin, kind of like if any of you have touched a Bible, it's kind of like Bible paper, and it like has like a smell and it gets on your hands. So I just want to give everybody the tactile experience of young Jeremy touching the newspaper.
Young Jeremy, 19-year-old Jeremy, answers this ad. And if I'd had any experience in the real world, I would have seen a bunch of red flags, because I go to this office building and this guy meets me at the front door and like takes me up the stairs, and the office building is largely empty. Nobody is in the building except this one organization who has a paper sign on the door. And I go in and I sit with about
millions.
Yes. I sit with like 6 or 7 other dudes with either no work experience or like pretty clearly like ex-felons probably. And we watch a video to show us the job, and then you're just hired on the spot. That's it. And these are all red flags that I would know to look out for, but at the age of 19,
I was like, okay, well, I guess this is just how it works at some jobs. And I was selling little booklets of glamour shots. And I was sent out on the road, and I got paired up with a guy who didn't have a car because I had a car. And so I had to drive him to the place where it was our territory, quote unquote, which was a shopping mall. And I had to go like person to person in this shopping mall and try to sell packages of glamour shots. I think I sold 2 over the course of 3 weeks. And, of course, like the guy
It's not bad.
who hired me was like, you have the potential to make $10,000 a week at this job. If you really push yourself. Yeah, you could tell by the office. He's like, that's where I started. He's like, I started where you are now, and I made all this money, and now I'm a manager and I'm getting paid 6 figures to teach you guys how to do this. And I'm like, in retrospect, I don't believe him. He wore like the most ill-fitting suit.
Can't imagine why not.
Looking
back, yes. So and I think I was selling them for 40. And to be fair, you got a fairly good chunk of these things when you sold them. They were like $45 a piece, and you got $30 for each one that you sold. So
yeah, but you got $60 in 3 weeks.
Correct. Now, if I'd been selling one per hour, incredible money in the year of our Lord 2000 or whatever it was. Yeah, it would have been 2000. But $60 over 3 weeks.
You guys, the Twin Towers were still standing, and Jeremy is selling glamour shots booklets.
Yes.
At a mall.
So
unsuccessfully.
That was one of the weirdest jobs. I was a rural route mail carrier.
Oh, okay.
Where I had to drive in the passenger seat of my own car. And this was not like this was a 2003 Toyota Matrix, so it had like a center console. It wasn't like one of those, because a lot of people who do rural route stuff will get like an old 1980s car with like a bench seat. But I'm driving a Toyota Matrix, and so my left leg is hooked around the center console. So I can push the gas and the brake with my left foot, and then like my left hand is driving the car while I'm sitting.
You were a much younger man.
When I was a much younger man, this was in rural Alabama. The town of Wetumpka was my center sort of base. And
shout out to all our Wetumpka listeners. Thank you.
And it was wild, the range of wealth in this one area. I would deliver to literal mansions, and I would deliver to trailer parks, and they would be quite close to one another. I delivered one time to what was very clearly a plantation house that the family had been forced, obviously, when they no longer had slaves, they couldn't afford to farm the fields, and so they had been selling off the land piecemeal to live. And sad. At this point, the family who was living there was probably the 3rd generation past when slavery ended. And so I go up to the door to deliver a package, and this old ass man opens the door, and there is like a crack in the wall in the plaster that goes all the way from the ceiling, like because it had a grand staircase in the middle, and it just like had this crack in the wall that went from the ceiling down to the floor, and the roof was leaking. So there was like algae sort of green growing on the sides of it, and plants growing out of the wall itself.
Nice.
Which is like kind of weird and cool at the same time, just watching the decay of the antebellum South. Anyway.
And they were probably looking at you like, this young, white, flexible mail carrier might just be able to help us.
I did begin to understand why those people in the 90s went postal. Like, that job sucked so bad. I had to be up at like 4:30 in the morning so that I could get to work early enough to gather up all of the sorted mail, the unsorted mail, like dropping it, because you have to like sort it yourself. The unsorted mail, you have to put it into, there are little cubby holes for every address on your route. And so you have to slide it in there yourself
And then once you've done that, you have to bundle it up in these big fat bundles with, you had to put what looks like a tiny moving strap around one side and then rubber bands around the other so that it wouldn't come to pieces. And sometimes it did anyway, because the rubber band would break and you'd be like, motherfucker. There's just like shit everywhere in your car when one of the bundles breaks. Awful. And then you had to get your packages and you had to put them in reverse order in your car because you had to pull them out in the correct order. And then people would lie. Like you would go to their house and you'd knock on the door, you'd ring the doorbell. Nobody would come to the door, and then you would leave, and then they'd be like, he didn't knock on the door. He didn't come to my door. He needs to come back here. And I'd be like, no fucking way. You literally would get chased by dogs. You would open the mailbox and bees and wasps would fly out into your car. It's a tough job. I don't care how much mail carriers get paid. It's not enough. I'm trying to think about.
My dad was a mail carrier.
Oh, it's yeah. I mean, I think if it had been like a city route, I probably would have hated it less. But it was
It was not a city route.
it was a
very
was it a rural route?
very rough, semi-rural
Mm,
area.
yeah, yeah. And I had like a handful of neighborhoods, and those were nice and easy because it's like paved streets and like all close together, and so you can get a bunch of mail delivered in a short amount of time. But my God,
That's what satisfies us. It's what makes us feel connected.
yeah, yeah.
Being able to efficiently distribute mail.
God, third weirdest job. It's actually not that weird of a job, but because it was in Paris, Texas, I worked at Sears in the electronics department, and we had one time these two women who, it's a weird story. Like, apparently their father moved out into the woods and built a cabin and had children out there, and they all dress in like homemade clothes, and they don't have running water, and they don't have electricity. And
The McVeigh family, everyone.
and one time, two of the daughters came into the store. And when I say you could smell them before you saw them, I mean that when they came in the side door of the Sears, the entire warehouse sized building smelled like filth. Like, I can't even describe the smell to you. It was like this sort of sickly sweet. I don't even know. It was wild. And they walked hand in hand. They were dirty. They were like covered in dirt and filth. And their hair was like one giant dreadlock, like each. They had like one, like their hair was just a bundle because they never washed it. And they went back into the bathroom of the Sears and then walked out the front door, and the whole Sears smelled for literal weeks after they left.
Jesus.
The bathroom smelled for months. They could not get the smell out of the bathroom because it was such a small enclosed space that they were in. It was crazy. One time I got called by crank yankers. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure it was Adam Carolla. It was before Crank Yankers came out. But after I saw Crank Yankers, I was like, wait a second. I was like, that's the dude who called me. There's a character that he plays on Crank Yankers, which is like, it's fucked up in retrospect. He plays like an overweight disabled person, and he calls, or his wife is overweight and disabled. Anyway, he was trying to get a rise out of me, and I was like so even keel that I think they were like, we can't use this, because
Can't
I was
even
like,
publish this.
I totally was just like, yeah, whatever, man. You can, because he was like, I want to buy one of them flat screen TVs. And this was back when flat screen TVs were brand new and
Oh,
cost
shit. Yeah.
they cost $10,000 for the 32-inch and $15,000 for the 36-inch.
Jesus.
And we only had one of each, and
Now I can get one for like $50.
we never sold either one of them. But anyway, he
Right.
called and was like, I'd like to get me one of them flat screen TVs. And I was like, oh, okay, sure, yeah, come on by. And he was like, well, I just got some questions because I want to know how wide the aisles are where you are. And I was like, they're like standard
size of an aisle, and he was like, "Oh, well, my wife, she's just real big. She's like 450 pounds and all whatever." And I was like, "Yeah, that we can totally accommodate that. That shouldn't be a problem, whatever." It was just I didn't get freaked out about it or weird about it, so they're probably like, "All right, we got to go." I mean, it might have
Boring,
just been
yeah.
like a morning show DJ calling. I mean, who the hell knows who it was, but it was pretty clearly like an extended prank call.
Sure.
But one time somebody tried to break into and steal from the Sears. They backed their truck through the doors, smashed through the front doors, but they were smart in that nobody knows what Hastings is. There was a store called Hastings. It's like
a mattress store, isn't it?
no, it's like a they sell like music and movies and they do like both new and used. Anyway, their accomplice had broken a window at Hastings about 30 minutes before the people with the truck backed into the Sears. But what they didn't think about is the fact that the cop shop is south, Hastings is north, and the Sears is right in the middle. And the cops had to drive past the Sears to get to Hastings. And because the cops were so slow to respond, they got there 30 minutes after these guys had backed their truck into the front of the Sears. And they initially had tried to steal Sony Vega, which is, again, I'm sorry, I'm having to explain a lot of like ancient technology. This was a tube television that had a flat.
So if you can just imagine Moses's tablet on the mound, it's kind of like that.
And it weighed probably that much too. The 32-inch Vega weighed 500 pounds, and the 36-inch Vega weighed 700 pounds. And so they tried to steal the floor model.
GoldenEye was so sick on that shit.
It was pretty sick on that. My grandparents bought a Vega from Sears when I worked there. Anyway, so they tried to steal the 36-inch Vega. They picked it up off the stand. They got about 3 steps away, and then one of them dropped it, and it was so heavy. It was so heavy, it smashed through the linoleum floor, through the subfloor, and into the concrete. It smashed the concrete that it fell onto, and then they just left it there. Then they went and got a 27-inch Samsung TV and carried that out to the car. And then they just grabbed handfuls of clothing and threw that in the back of the car. But as they're doing this, that's when the cops drive by and they see that these guys are there. So they like turn on their lights and they pull in the parking lot. These dudes jump in the truck, but they don't close the tailgate. So as they're driving off, the TV slides out, all the clothes start falling off the back of the truck. Just unbelievable. Paris, Texas is a magical place. I hope people get to visit it.
Oh, is that the hotel you were staying in with Ed Bernays and
yes,
Trotsky?
Paris, Texas, not Paris. Yeah. Anyway, weird jobs I've had.
How am I supposed to top that?
I too have a top 3. I was actually only going to share 2. And then Jeremy, one of your stories reminded me actually, no, my first job ever was incredibly strange. So one of the weird jobs that I had, not as funny as Jeremy's, obviously we can just all, everybody just get it out, just giggle, pause and
Jeremy's
giggle.
the best, yes, it's so funny.
It's the weirdest job. The first weird job I had was, I am from a place with like a county fair. And I served, and also we had parades. My mom hated parades, and she would, that song, I Love a Parade? She would sing like, I hate a parade, and like bang pots and pans like around the house. She was not strange at all. And I somehow was serving candy corn at candy, like the sweet popcorn. Candy.
Oh, like kettle corn.
Like kettle corn, yes. The candied, it was like called like candied popcorn. But I guess, like kettle corn. So I was selling kettle corn at this fair, this like sweet. So for people who don't know, it's like sweet popcorn. And you might think, oh, like a little teenage girl or whatever selling this. I was about 14. And now I am like 5'2" on a humid day, like including my hair, of which I have a lot. And so like I'm quite small. And so I was smaller, understandably, as a small child. And you might think it's just like selling these pre-made bags, but it's not. It's like this big, like a cast iron cauldron. And they put the like sugar and the oil and the kernels in. And you have to wear like, I remember it as kind of like a welding mask. Like I had to wear this like big metal thing in front of my face with like a slat for my eyes. And you have to like stir it with this giant stick, and like the hot sugar grains like splatter on you. And I had like tiny little scars for years from the hot sugar like getting on my skin and burning me. And so that would be one job I had that was pretty strange. One I just remembered recently when I was recording on Jen's podcast. I don't remember what she said, but it reminded me. And I was like, oh my God, that reminds me of the time I was a jazz singer in Saigon. And she was like, what? And I was. So the Saigon heads out there listening, it was a place called Broma, which is still open. So I guess I want to say good for them. But my friend, who was way too fucking young to be dating the owner of this bar, I don't give a fuck. He shouldn't have acted that way. I have no problem calling him out. He shouldn't have acted that way. I went with her to his bar. No, she was like, I mean, she had to be like 19 or 20, and he was like in his 30s.
Oh.
I mean,
not good.
She was way too young. Not good. And so I'm going out with her, and then there was this really cute Filipino girl who was singing. And then he was like, oh, if only she could come more nights a week. We like still really need somebody for, I don't remember, I think it was like Wednesday or Thursday. And he was like, do you know any singers? And I was like, I mean, I can kind of sing. And he was like, you're hired. And I was like, what? And so I had to do these like 3-hour sets at Broma. Yeah, never heard me sing. I'm decent. Luckily, like I am good, and I am like trained at this. But it's like a 3-hour set, which is really long to sing live.
For singing, yeah.
On this like rooftop bar, just me and this guy, Mark, because I was like, I don't know any, like, I just moved here. I literally don't know any musicians. And he was like, Mark will play for you. And I was like, okay. And so I had like 1 week to put together 3 hours of music. And then after a few weeks, I used to wear these like really cute, I don't think it's still there. In the Vietnamese pronounce that like Megan, but it looks like it's Magon, Magonn. Saying this for anyone who wants to go shopping in Saigon. They have these cute dresses. They're very sweet and kind of girly, and they have beautiful fabrics and flowers on them and stuff like that, like fluffy. Like I was really sort of like going for it. And one night, the owner, I'm not naming him. I literally can't remember his name. He like asked me to I was like, is there anything more that you want to see in my set? And he asked me if I would show more tits and ass. And who else was at the table aside from his 2 young girlfriend was my boyfriend at the time. And I'm not proud to say this, but there was a brief period of my life before the people's husband where I dated a US Marine.
Oh no.
And he was just a giant. He was actually like, for being we obviously did not have that much in common. We did not date for very long, but for like the couple months that we were seeing each other, he was a very lovely guy. His mother was undocumented. And so he had a lot of different opinions than a lot of other people. And he was much older. So usually the people who would have been in his job were like teenagers or early 20s, but he was like almost 30. And so he was like decent. He was a nice guy. I mean, shout out to him. But he was like a giant man. And the fact that like my boss at this bar would say that in front of my giant boyfriend was just like the craziest thing. So I didn't sing there for that long. I didn't date that guy for that long. And that was my second weird job. And then my third weird job. Okay, so when I was a child, about to be a teenager, I had just become I was like 12 or something. My cousin went to Club Fed, Penn State.
Yep.
The state penitentiary. And he had a pawn shop, and we threw him a going away party at my cousin's bar. But he had a pawn shop. And then when you get out, you can't have a pawn shop anymore. So for a number of years, my dad took over his pawn shop. And they did like payday cash advances and like pawn goods. And I used to work at my dad's pawn shop. And similar, I mean, I don't think it was a prank call, sadly. I do think that it was like a real person calling, but she did call and ask me if she could get money to buy some crack. And I was like, well, do you have like a bank statement and a pay stub? And she was like, I just like want to buy crack. And like very similar to Jeremy, I was like, well, if you have a bank statement and pay stub, we can cash your check for you and you can buy, you know, whatever you like. Here is the information about our rates. And then somebody, again, as Jeremy, we're having this parallel experience, drove their car through the front of the store. And I had to get off the phone and call my dad and be like, so weird story.
A lady was trying to buy crack with a payday loan.
This woman was trying to buy crack with her payday cash advance, and now somebody's Buick is in the store. And he was like, "What do you mean, like in?" And I was like, "Driven in the wall. The wall is broken."
Beautiful.
That was a real story. My 3
Incredible.
weirdest jobs.
Well, mine aren't very exciting. I tend to like stay with jobs for long periods of time. I don't like to
Yeah, I'm utterly
switch
unhireable.
jobs.
I get fired from everything.
But there was one period of my life where I had moved to Colorado from Virginia and I could not get a fucking job to save my life. And so I started getting stupid jobs. But it's kind of similar to Jeremy's story. Like I sold Kirby's for like 2 weeks. I sold cars for a week. And by sold cars, I mean I didn't sell any cars for a week. And they just don't pay you. That shit is crazy and should be highly illegal.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, not super exciting. I guess the weirdest job probably for people listening that isn't super similar to other people's jobs they've already said. I was a captioning agent
Oh yeah. I also had this job.
at a
What?
at a business called Caption Call. And
I did the
this
test
is,
for that, and they were like, "You're too stupid. You can't do this." And I was like, "What?"
you do have to
I
pass
type
tests.
really fast.
Well, it's not about talking fast, it's about listening and repeating clearly and enunciating. Anyway,
No, it was like typing, and I was like, "I type so
They
fast."
do
No,
have to
no,
do
no.
a typing test as
Yes.
well, but that is not how this job works.
That's for corrections
Well,
only.
they were like,
Correct.
"You are definitely stupid as fuck and cannot work at this job." And I was like, "Thank
In
you."
this job, you use a program called Dragon, which is like now it's probably all replaced by AI, but
Yes.
but
a bunch of people
this
got
is-
laid off because AI has now replaced the people who are doing this
Well,
job.
isn't
but at
that
the
good that
time-
both of you have this stable job as a podcaster?
Yes. Your job is to listen to the phone calls, one side of the phone call, and repeat the words into a microphone clearly and with punctuation so that it shows up on the phone for them to read.
And disfluencies as well.
And disfluencies as well. But you can't say disfluencies like you would normally say them because the microphone doesn't understand anything that you're saying.
Yeah.
So instead of like, you have to say ujhup.
Instead of you have to say emhem.
Emhem. Yep. So yeah, I'll give you a little demonstration. Ray, if you want to start talking, I will caption your sentences.
Okay, so like
Okay,
I
so
tried
I tried
get this
to
job,
yep,
and I could not get this job
period. And I could not get this job, period.
because they thought I was like the
Because
stupidest
they
fucking
thought I was like
person,
the
and I
stupidest
didn't really
fucking
understand
person.
why.
And I
I
didn't
had
really
like so many
understand why,
references, and
Alexis.
I was
have
like
so many references, and yeah. So
competent.
anyway, like that.
Except I feel like you were not speaking as clearly as you should have spoken. You have to kind of talk like this.
I needed to turn it up. I couldn't actually hear. Anyway,
Oh, because my
it was
shit
just a
sound
weird fucking job,
quality.
and you hear the craziest
Oh my
shit
God,
because you're
yes.
captioning like people's like just nonstop all day. Like imagine listening to just random people's fucking phone calls all day long. Like you're basically the FBI, and you'll hear like old like 90-year-old dudes having phone sex. You'll hear a lot of like medical calls, a lot of just lonely old people that their spouse just died or they're going to die soon and just dealing with these existential problems.
Sometimes you would get like really sad calls where like a parent would be calling their child, and the child, it's an adult here. We're talking about like elderly people, and they'd be calling their adult children, and their adult children would act like they hated their parents. It would be like, they'd be like, "Hey, I was just calling to see how you were doing." And they'd be like, "What do you want?" we already talked yesterday. Why are you calling me again? And I'm like, Jesus, dude.
Yeah,
Like,
so many people are mean to their
parents. Mean as
parents.
fuck to
Yeah,
their
it's
parents.
fucked. And these guys, if you hear them talk to each other, they're just so fucking lonely.
Yeah.
That it's just like it breaks my heart. I mean, sometimes they're assholes and
Sometimes
they
they are.
absolutely fucking deserve it.
Yeah.
But Jesus Christ, like people's kids are so fucking mean to them. They'll be like, I've got things to do, Dad. I can't just be sitting on the phone talking to you for a fucking hour every day. Like, it's so mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad. I captioned a call of like where this guy talked through his dog's last moments, and it was just like I'm crying captioning his call. It
It's a weird
it's
job.
I
got a call once.
Yeah, it's a weird job.
Because you're not like if you hit the hour mark of a call, you are allowed to transfer it. And so I got transferred a call that had been apparently going on for an hour, and then I had it for another hour and then transferred it to somebody else, but it was an
That's because you can't
earnings.
transfer a call unless it's been an hour, unless you run up against your break.
Correct. Yeah, you could transfer it if you hit your break or your lunch break. But this was a meeting of a board of directors, of which the person I was captioning for was a member of this board, and they were talking about laying off 60,000 people. And I was like, I really wish I'd heard the beginning of this call because I would have put them on blast. Because they were like, somebody asked, well, are we informing these people that they're going to be laid off? Because it was like, I don't know, I forget. It was like August, and they were going to lay these people off in November, and they were like, well, we will, but it probably won't be until about 2 weeks before the layoffs take place because we don't want them to leave and start finding
Start
other
looking for
jobs.
other jobs.
Right. And so they're like, so we're not actually going to tell them that we're laying them off until about 2 weeks before it happens. And it was like the most ghoulish conversation because they spoke about it like these were not human beings. It was just a number in their portfolio that they had to address because of in their mind a loss of profit meant that we needed to get rid of 60,000 people in order to make ourselves profitable again.
And ironically, I know some people have already heard this story because I was podcasting when it happened, but they closed our caption call center here in Colorado Springs, like basically probably the other end of that phone call. Not literally because this was years before, but a similar phone call almost certainly happened. They called us in for a meeting, right, which they would do every now and then, right, to like explain some new concept or new program or whatever. And then they're like, okay, everyone, you're locked out of your accounts. And as of this moment, you no longer have a job.
Oh my God.
And then you're
Cool.
just like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Because that's because they don't want you to try to find another job. And now
Right.
you're up fucking shit creek.
Yep.
It is so awful.
Now you're unemployed and have to, hope that you find a job immediately. Yeah. Nightmare stuff.
It is so weird that we ended up communists.
Yeah. They gave me a severance of like $1,000 or something. Like, cool, thanks.
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 Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird jobs.
They envision the
On that
entire
happy
world
note.
Sovietized